Hi, this is Bill, the photo brother.
And this is Dan, the video brother, and this is Stacktalk with the Railbrothers, the podcast where we talk about big trains, small trains, and everything in between. And today, this is we haven't been at it for a while. This is our New Year's special where we're going to review the year of 2024.
Since we haven't done a podcast since 2023.
Is that right? The last one was in 2023?
The last podcast we did was our Christmas podcast.
Well, this
from
is
2023.
This is a New Year's podcast. We're picking up right where we left off.
Exactly.
Except
just a whole another year. Yeah. So we're going to just go bing, bam, boom, bam, except we're not. We're going to talk a lot about stuff that happened in 2024. We, in theory, have like 12, 13 points that we're going to hit, and none of these are in any particular
no particular order.
Or anything like that. It's just kind of stuff we're going to talk about. It doesn't mean if we don't talk about it that stuff didn't important happen, because I don't know, this is just kind of like, it's our podcast. We'll talk about what we want. Ha.
Yeah, and this is a mixture of both kind of Railfan things and transportation things. So it's got steam engines, got all sorts of news. So we're going to go a recap of all the news. Biggest stories, things that we thought were the most interesting in the Railfan world in the past year. And we'll have to do more episodes. This is theoretically episode 1 of season 2. So this is season 2 of Rail.
Yeah, season 2. And this time we're going to have video. We're going to put this on YouTube. Guess
YouTubes.
What? I just said it, so then that means Dan has to do it.
Dang it. Okay.
This means we're going to go on YouTube. We'll have video. You could also be still listening to us as a podcast. Mm-hmm. But we will have a video possible on YouTube.
All right, let's get into it. So 2024, we had some pretty cool things going on in the Railfan world. Maybe we don't start with the sad thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
So let's talk about the final Spike tour. Well,
there was a little bit of a sad thing that happened with that one.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true.
So if you're trying not to do sad things, you're failing.
So I guess as a recap, CP 2816 is a beautiful, non-streamlined... Is it a Royal Hudson? Is that one Royal?
Don't believe it's Royal. I think the Royals are the streamlined ones, if I remember correctly.
Does that mean that it pulled the Royal train when they visited, or just that was just the name of the class?
So the story of that is that Prince... not Prince, he was king at the time. King...
George V?
I think it's King George V went over there at some point to Canada. And he was actually an avid, rail fan, basically, or interested in steam locomotives and everything. And he actually got to ride in the cab at one point of the Royal Hudson pulling it. And he was apparently so impressed with the performance of these locomotives that he gave them the designation of Royal. Which means they can have the Royal emblem on that class of engine.
Oh, dang.
Which I think these are the only ones outside of Great Britain that have that designation. There might be, if I remember correctly, this was just you made me pull this out of a deep dive Wikipedia I did a really long time ago. So I may or may not be accurate.
Thank you, random Wikipedia editor from 2015.
King George, it was King George the 6th.
King George the 6th, okay, gotcha.
1939.
Cool. And I mean, and we know King Charles likes trains too. He's a train guy.
Oh, is he?
Well, yeah, he was the sponsor for
Tornado,
the P2. Well, Tornado and the P2 because they named the next P2. Prince of Wales after him. But now he's the king, so he's King Charles.
So
I don't know if they change the name, or are they that's not on the list, but
this is what you guys, if you've listened to us at all, you guys know that we do not stick to the topics.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
So the P2 is it a Mikado?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it was, and Mikados were rare in Britain for the most part, and so it was one of the more powerful engines. It's basically like an A1 or an A3 or an A4 actually, that you add another driving wheel to. So it had a lot more tractive effort, mostly used on trains up to Aberdeen, was my understanding. Anyway, they're making a brand new one, just like Tornado. It's the same A1 locomotive truss. So no big news with that, except I think Tornado's back running again after an inspection and boiler ticket thing, I think.
I didn't research this at all because this was
this is not on the list.
thing.
So anyway, getting back to CP21.
We can talk about it. If you like.
So it's a Royal Hudson. It's the 462, a beautiful steam engine, and this was.
Except it's not a Royal Hudson. That one's not the Royal Hudson.
Oh. What is it?
It is a. Give me a second. I have it here. Or I had it. I think it's just it's a H1B Hudson, Canadian Pacific.
That's cool.
But it's not a Royal Hudson. The Royal Hudson are the ones that are streamlined. This is technically a different class.
The streamlined, they look really good.
Yeah.
But this was in celebration of CP buying Kansas City Southern, right?
Yeah. Merging.
Merging. Merging. I wonder who came out on top, considering they ran their Canadian locomotive all the way to
Kansas
Mexico.
City Southern, because they probably just got a bunch of money.
It is kind of a bummer because the Kansas City Southern paint scheme, the Southern Bell paint scheme, absolutely incredible.
Oh, I agree.
Detail. Has probably the most detail.
It's one of the ones where I really wish I had seen that one operating somewhere. Like, I feel like I don't think I've ever seen one of those.
You've never seen one, really?
I don't think so.
Because they would end up on like power as just on like a random train. They would come through Philly every now and then. So
you see more freight trains than I do. Remember, I guess
that's true.
I live along the River Line. There are little light rail DMUs that I see every day. That's the extent of freight. That's my usual trains.
That's
I'm
your
seeing.
usual
Or
train.
like, I see a Aero set when I cross over the NEC. Like I'm not seeing that many freight trains. Like, I need to go see some freight trains.
Yeah, I wonder how many trains I see every day.
You probably see a lot more than me.
Yeah.
So I'm jealous.
It could be as high as 20 or as low as 2. Depends on what you consider a train as well. Watch our first video, Trainy Trains, on what exactly is a train, to get our hot takes on traininess. So anyway, this was a tour historical locomotive. Did they restore it just for this purpose? Like, they knew they were going to buy this on the railroad, they happened to have it ready in time for this whole merger?
I believe that the plan was to be like, hey, it was like they announced even before the merger was completed, was like, hey, if this merger happens, you're going to see the steam engine run.
That's pretty cool.
Because I don't think it had run since... Do I have that in this article I'm looking at? No, I need to go look it up again. But I believe it hadn't run since about like 2010-ish previously. Here, yeah, this one's called the Empress, by the way. That's why we keep mistaking it for the Royal Hudson, because it has the name Empress. Let's see here.
And by the way, that was what all of the Canadian Pacific ocean liners are named. They're Empress of X. So one of our grandfather's favorite ships was the Empress of Britain, which was a beautiful 3-stacker. It looked like a little mini Queen Mary. But it sank in World War II, very tragically. Nice looking ship though.
Yeah, it looks like it last ran in either 2011 or 2012. Judging from the very accurate Wikipedia. But then, as I said, they restored it. They finished restoring it last year. I think they did some test runs last year, 2023. And then they did the final spike tour this year, April through July, going from Calgary to Chicago down to Mexico City and back.
Just crazy, absolutely crazy. A 3-country tour. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Maybe the Flying Scotsman might have done that when it came over in like the 70s or whatever.
Yeah, definitely not from recent memory. So
yeah, so probably the most ambitious steam.
Does that
tour.
even happen in Europe? Do the steam engines go across country lines in Europe? Like, is a German engine going to France?
This would be the equivalent of like a train going from Denmark to the very bottom tip of Italy. Like, that's a huge distance.
Yeah.
Really massive. So, really, maybe a really cool PR stunt. I think it engaged a lot of folks out there. Had some controversy. my understanding is that the U.S. and Canadian portions went pretty well, but once it went to Mexico, the manners of the crowd became a little bit rowdy, and people got dangerously close to the locomotives, such that one person was struck and killed, which was really sad.
Yeah.
So that's just a reminder to all those in the Railfan community to...
Reminder, everyone, if you're trackside, stay away from the tracks. Trains
these are gigantic, massive 1,000-pound machines going...
And just because you're not standing on the tracks, the trains... I'm pretty sure almost everybody listening to this podcast knows this, but there's an overhang from the tracks. So, I think the recommended distance is actually like 20 feet away from the tracks.
Yeah, Union Pacific says 20 feet, but...
yeah. But that was after, they started saying that after... 844 hit somebody because of that.
Yeah.
So it happens in all countries. So it's a tragic thing to happen, especially on such a really cool,
special event that became sort of macabre in a way. And I think some of it is that most seasoned rail fans, I think, understand the rough size of a train. It's probably about 12 feet wide, maybe a little bit wider. So if you think about that, the gauge is 4 foot 8.5, so it's going to extend many feet out from each side of the rail. So you really got to be careful of that. So I think because this was such a great PR stunt, you had a lot of non-rail fans going out there, maybe seeing their first steam locomotive in 20 or 30 years.
Or ever,
yeah, and being really excited about it, and as they should be. But unfortunately, the railroad was not able to sort of publicize safety ahead of time. So that was rather tragic. But I think the rest of it seemed to have gone really well. It had a huge following going all the way up and down the U.S.
Sadly, we didn't get to go see it.
We did not get to go see it. We talked to lots of people who have done it and who were able to see it. They said it was awesome. But I just imagine that must be so crazy, because I was able to chase Big Boy a few years back, and that thing's going real fast. I think this was going a similar speed, where it's going close to highway speeds. So unlike most of the trains we chase on the East Coast, where the trains rarely go above 40 miles an hour, these trains, if you stop to document it, by the time you get back in your car, back on the road, you've really got to get onto an interstate highway to get in front of it. So it ends up being a whole different beast to try to chase. So anyway, so that was a big thing that happened this year. Any other thoughts? SMS 9. What is SMS 9?
You're asking me? Is this a quiz for me?
You said just tell us about it.
Fine. SMS
tell me
9.
About it.
Fine, because I've had to write this in our Instagram post a million times. SMS 9
yeah,
is
give
an
me the copy.
060 Alco steam locomotive built in 1942 for the U.S. Army. One of the cool things about it, though, like now that I've gone through my blah, 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 one of the cool things about it is I actually operated here in New Jersey, where I am, and close to where Danny is in Philly.
I'm a Jersey boy at heart still.
He is, yeah, at Fort Dix, which is spelled D-I-X, just so you know. But it operated here.
You mean Joint Base Dix McGuire Lakehurst?
Yes. I believe it's different. I think it's. Is Dix first, or is
I'm sure it depends on what branch you're talking to.
That's probably true. But yeah, it's currently part of the Joint Base in New Jersey. Other fun things you can find there are the Hindenburg Memorial, where the Hindenburg crashed. But they had a little railroad. They had a railroad going through the base, and the SMS number 9, which is now Woodstown Central number 9, operated there, I believe, during World War II. It operated, I think, in another one in Delaware, if I remember correctly. Let's see here. I'm gonna click my link that I put there.
And do you have your pictures? Do you have some pictures ready that we can look at? That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, give me a second. I can find some.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat because it's a local engine. It's in South Jersey and so it operates on a railroad called the Woodstown Central, which is kind of a brand of the SMS. Is that like a good way to put it? It's like a sub-tourist railroad.
Yeah,
it's a tourist railroad owned entirely by the SMS lines.
Yeah,
which is
so it actually is a really cool operation. They only started a few years ago. Like
Woodstown Central.
Woodstown Central, yeah. So go back a little further. SMS has been operating, I think, since the 90s, if I remember correctly, and they've been kind of working out of a facility, Pureland facility in New Jersey, and it was kind of like a little industrial switching operation they have there, and they've been expanding that. But they were really famous. They're famous in the Railfan community because they operate Baldwin diesels, which are.
I don't think they've made a new Baldwin diesel since the '60s.
Yeah, so like, and these aren't like they're getting these aren't getting remotored by like EMD or GE or something like that. These are Baldwin diesels, and I got to finally hear one of these things when me and Danny were there to watch the Woodstown Central number 9 debut, and I kind of fell in love with him. This thing sounds like a boat. I love it. Like it's a and I'm like,
they're pretty cool.
Man,
they have an interesting look to them too.
Yeah. So they were famous in the Railfan community because I think a lot of the workers there, and then I believe the owner as well, I think had some kind of ties to the New Hope and Ivyland, which is where number 9 it ended up for years. It operated for a short period of time there, I think in like the 70s or 80s, maybe even the 60s.
And ironically, it's an Alco, right? So they're known for Baldwin diesels, but Alco steam engines.
So they bought number 9 from them back in 2009. 2009, and they've been kind of working on it since then. And the restoration looks amazing.
So they're a pretty incredible operation. They've got a neat shop that's in Pureland, and they're doing all sorts of stuff. They have the Reading car body diesels there. They've got a bunch of Alcos there as well. They had a FA or PA? I think it was a FA, right?
I think it was a FA, yeah.
FA, which they started up when we were there. Anyway, so very cool shop. Geographically totally separated from the actual line they run SMS 9 on or Woodstown Central on. So they have, an industrial track. They've got a couple little branch lines in southern New Jersey, and a lot of them are disconnected, so they have to go through the Southern Railroad of New Jersey to kind of ferry their equipment over. So the Woodstown Central is completely distinct in terms of trackage from the other one, and so they have to ferry all the stuff over there. But that's a sort of railroad that they started recently.
Teaser. But yeah, as I said, we went there. We went there, what was it, in the beginning of November. They had a Railfan and Railroad magazine had their 50th anniversary celebration, and they did that by having photo charters and excursion on the Woodstown Central. We got, because of the fire ban in New Jersey at the time, they only got to operate number 9 like basically in the station and slightly outside of it in Woodstown. They're like, we're not taking this in the woods. We don't want to be the cause of a forest fire. Which, smart of them. But we did get an excursion pulled by one of the Baldwin diesels they had. And they had a Baldwin diesel, and what was the other one? It was a GP
38 or something.
39, 38?
39, yeah.
Let me see, what was it? I can go look.
But their color scheme is pretty neat. They painted up as kind of late Reading style locomotives. So they have the big diamond on the cab, and it's the dark green color that the Reading had at the very end before they went out of business. So it's really well done operation.
GP 38-3. Yeah, which the cool thing about that one is that it actually operated down on that line in Salem as well. I believe it was a former Pennsylvania Railroad or Pennsylvania Reading Seashore line. Yeah. So that's
interesting. How many of those locomotives end up staying in the region? Because Cape May Seashore line has another one that was like same thing, like ran on that line. Kind of
exactly. So it's really kind of cool. But yeah, when I was looking, did you inform everyone that how they went from being like the switching thing to having the line in Woodstown to Salem?
Yeah, I mean, and
Swedesboro.
They're primarily a switching sort of short line freight setup, but a few years back they decided to operate one of their branch lines as a tourist railroad, the Woodstown Central.
Well, keep in mind that the Swedesboro to Salem line was it's owned by the county, I believe, the counties. Remember, I think it's the counties, not the state. And then they contract out different railroads to operate it. So previously it was, I think, Southern Railroad in New Jersey operating it, but there really wasn't much going on the line, so they weren't really interested in it. So SMS got the contract for that a few years ago and then started improving it. They got, I think, grants from the county as well to really improve it, and then they decided to start this tourist railroad on it, which I believe started operating in very end of 2022?
Yeah, and they first restored a little Reading caboose, beautifully, by the way, I might add.
Yeah, we got to just ride on that.
I got the
what was it, a couple weeks ago, and that was beautiful.
Great thing to do with the whole family.
Arguably, is that probably the most beautiful caboose you've ever been in?
I would say so. It's probably the best restored that I could think of. And the really cool thing, and this is kind of shocking that this has not been the case for any other cabooses we've been in, every single window opened up. Like usually, like all the cabooses have been, there's like some random window that's got like plexiglass over and it's all yellow and you can't see out of it. Every single window was absolutely clear, had beautiful woodwork around it, and you could open up, which was really neat when we had number 9 right in front of us, because you could open up the front of it and all the steam and smoke would come into the caboose, which maybe everyone else didn't appreciate except for me and you, Billy. But but it was.
I don't think anybody even noticed.
It was a pretty
mainly because we had also a coal-fired stove heating the caboose.
Yeah.
So that was pretty neat. Yeah, and it was really warm because of that.
We got extra time with Santa Claus.
It's true. Yep.
Which is a perk for the kids and for us, whatever.
Yeah. So,
but SMS number 9, really great little steam engine. They seemed like they did a great job with it. They've been working on it for 16 years or something.
As I said, since 2009 they acquired it. So.
Wow.
And it looks like it also operated in Fort Eustis, Virginia, and then was retired from the Army in 1958, and then sold to the Virginia Blue Ridge. Where I believe its sister engine, which is now up in Whippany, also went.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe they're trying to restore that one as well, if I remember correctly.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it has a nice little bark to it. It's got some nice Stacktalk on the line. The line is quite flat. Not like crazy scenery, like there's not like huge valleys and gorges there, but it's really pretty farmland, and it goes through a couple cute towns in South Jersey.
Flat. You didn't chase it with me the other day. There are like parts where that hit. It's working half the time. Like it's going through little dips and everything.
So it's got a nice Stacktalk to it.
It's not level.
Yeah.
Like it's going through farmland, but it's crossing some streams and everything like that. That you definitely see the up and down of it as you're on, there's basically a parallel road. So the Santa trains were going from Woodstown to Swedesboro and back. Which, after talking to the railroad, I guess they said the reason they did that instead of going down towards Mannington Mills was it was a little shorter. So, they're just testing out the engine, so they're not sure about how much water usage it's going to need and stuff like that.
Evidently used a lot of water. So
yeah.
It's a switcher, not really meant to pull trains up and down the line super efficiently. So it'd be an ass to do something.
There's one spot where there's a really cool bridge. And you can really cool bridge where you can get a shot on it. It's really nice that way. The bridge. There's some spots for pacing. Truthfully, Woodstown is just a really cute little town. So if you ever want to if you're local, go ride on this. They've beautifully restored cars. Even if it's not the steam engine, you can see Baldwins. You can see local diesel. You can see local steam engine. Like, it's a really nice little operation they got.
The car they call the table car is probably my favorite restored piece of rolling stock. That's
the Reading one, or are those Reading or Jersey Central? I can't remember.
I don't remember because
they're painted like Reading.
They're like the Bethlehem Steel ones.
Yeah,
like made by Bethlehem Steel. So they look like the Reading, the Reading coaches by Bethlehem Steel. Jersey City had a bunch of them too. I mean Jersey Central. I forget which one it is. But what they did is they took out every other seat, allowing for there to be a nice generous sized table between all of the benches. So you can have two benches facing each other, but there's a really nice big sized table between them. Super comfortable for food, super comfortable for us. And I just thought that was a really great way they ended up doing it. And the tables are beautiful. I don't know what the wood was, but it's freaking nice looking. Really cool. So really nice operation.
Again. Great job, guys, down there, if any of you are listening. Let's see here. Do you want to go to the next one? Ooh,
this is a pretty big one.
How did we... Man, we are really local to ourselves. Really go with ourselves because, we're going with the small steam engine that got restored instead of some of these bigger announcements that happened this year. Which
this is just,
crazy.
I think, sort of arbitrary listing, just whatever we put down here.
Yep. All right, so this is Chesapeake and Ohio, 614, was sold from Ross Rowland, and it has been acquired by RJD America.
Whoever they are.
Well, their general manager is Jason Johnson, which I believe is also involved with EBT. Is that right? I can't remember. So
whoever it is, everyone takes them very seriously. So it seems like they've got the funding already lined up and are just ready to take it to Strasbourg and restore it. And as the kids say, run it on the main line.
He's involved with the T1 Trust. That's what it is too.
Oh, the T1 Trust. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it seems like it's in good hands. I'm excited to see it because we actually never got... Although we're in New Jersey and this thing operated when we were kids, somehow our dad never knew about it. And truthfully, kind of slightly bitter about that because I would love to have seen this thing run up to... what is that?
Port Jervis?
Port Jervis. That would have been amazing. Seeing this thing run at and I heard it would just... blow through everything, just high speed. Yeah, there it is.
So this is as it's sitting now. I think it's either in Virginia. There was a failed attempt to make a train that would go out to the Greenbrier Hotel. Ended up never happening, but they did paint the train as kind of lovely.
I believe the engines are also called Greenbriers by the CNO.
That's cool. So the Greenbrier is a hotel out in that area. Kind of famous hotel. So,
but yeah, it's a 484 Northern. CNO called them Greenbriers. Not everybody else. Nobody could agree on the name for Northerns, but for some reason we have all agreed to call it Northerns. It's famous because it was acquired by Ross Rowland to replace Reading 2101 after a roundhouse fire. He owned that, and it was the one he used to pull the American Freedom Train. So, and I believe this one, 614, was used on the Chessie Safety Express. It was also used to test whether, some new, by the American Coal Enterprise to develop new technology to use coal for steam engines, which... I don't think it really went anywhere, but
sounds cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah. And then it did a bunch of excursions on New Jersey Transit in the late 90s.
Which is crazy just to think of it. They were running steam engines out of Hoboken.
Yeah.
To Port Jervis, on the semi-regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty crazy. Too bad we missed out on that. Dang. That would have been cool.
Yeah, Dad, if you're listening.
He did pretty well at other places. I
know. But yeah, no, that I'm excited to see what happens with that. It sounds like it's getting restored. They're going to take it to Strasbourg to restore it. From from my understanding. So as I said, it seems like it's got good people behind it. It's got fully funded somehow.
Someone's got deep pockets
Like,
somewhere. I don't know.
Like so that'll be really exciting to see this thing run again.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like, ones that I'm like, it sounds like everybody seems to be very confident in this happening, so I'm surprised. Truthfully, I'm not actually that surprised. It's kind of it's a steam engine that seems like it's in fairly good condition, although it has been sitting outside, but it seems to have been taken care of.
One of the good things
with the right
like,
opportunity.
Like 611, it's got all roller bearings on all of its axles, which is a really big plus. So that's like one thing you really don't have to worry about as much on that engine that you would have to worry about in really any other engine or any other non-roller bearing engine. Because if it doesn't have that, you just have a plain bearing, which is like metal just rubbing up against metal with a little bit of oil in there. And if you don't get that lubricated properly,
detected.
Was that?
Hot box.
Oh exactly, yeah. That can overheat, and you have a problem there with your engine. That could, I guess, it could either seize or catch fire. I would think it'd probably seize, probably. But anyway, so these could run harder for longer and not have to worry a little as much about that. There's all sorts of still plain bearings all over the place in that thing, I'm sure, in the like the connecting rods and whatnot.
Yeah.
And all the little doodads for the valve gear. But so it's a very modern and powerful locomotive. So that'll be really exciting to see get restored, and I'm sure Strasbourg is going to do a great job with it since they're got kind of the preeminent restoration shop in the U.S.
Exactly. So going on to the next one, I'm going to just let you talk about this one because I feel like I am not qualified in the same way. I feel like, we were just like, let me preface it. So, what is it? The Fort
Wayne Historical Society?
Fort Wayne Historical Society, thank you. Fort Wayne Historical Society was teasing this one for I think a week, possibly a couple weeks. About it, dropping little hints on their social media page. Other groups in the that do steam restoration were kind of dropping hints too all over the internet and building this. Truthfully,
and just
from a social media perspective, this was one of in this Railfan area that we do. It was truthfully one of the best announcements ever. And guess what? I haven't even said what it is yet. So go for it, Dan.
Well, I want to put a little more color on this as well. So going back in the day, Billy was always the Pennsylvania Railroad man.
Not always.
Right?
Not always.
Almost always.
Lionel was a New York Central.
But then after that, you're like New York Central, not great. I don't know. Whatever it was, Billy just liked the Pennsylvania Railroad. And then I always gravitated
towards.
A Bell Pair
firebox looks. What can I say?
Was that you like the Bell Pair fireboxes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I always high-mounted headlight. I like a high-mounted headlight.
Okay, well, teach their own. I always liked the New York Central line for various reasons. One, because I liked because they have a tighter loading gauge than most of the railroads. Their engines tend to be kind of slim looking or taut looking, like they're. Just everything's kind of more compact, so you can really see the boiler a little bit more. They had typically a centered headlight, which I kind of liked. They also were probably the preeminent streamliners of all the steam engines or all the railroads out there, in my opinion, because they hired Henry Dreyfuss, probably the best industrial designer of the era. I mean, the Pennsylvania Railroad had Raymond Louis, but anyway. So I was always such a big fan of the New York Central. And a big fan of New York Central Steam in particular, and the Fort Wayne Railway Historical Society had been like dropping little crumbs for a very long time. Going back years, they started actually collecting New York Central rolling stock. So they basically bought almost what would almost be the entire rolling stock for the original 1941 Empire State Express. So that happened maybe 2 years ago, something like that. It was a big deal. And then this year they started dropping little hints. It's like, oh, there's something big's happening. And they'd post a little picture of like a blueprint. And then they'd post another little thing. And then like other people that we were following would do the same thing. Possibly the most coordinated PR stunt of a restoration in Railfan history, perhaps. So
like,
really well done.
It was like amazing to see. I'm like, oh wow, there are people on here that actually get how social media works,
and they did it really well. So
and they did really so. Like I am vaguely in the marketing space of things. Like in my real job, I was really impressed by this. Like I was like, and I was getting excited, and I knew whatever, and they'd be like, oh look, there's a New York Central thing here, and ooh look, there's a thing here, and like you'd be trying to figure out what it is via the drawings they made.
Yeah.
And eventually it became fairly obvious what it would probably be.
Yeah, and there had been rumors for a long time about, maybe someone's going to be doing like a serious attempt to build like a brand new New York Central Hudson, which they've all been scrapped, or potentially restoring one of the extremely limited amount of New York Central bits of steam locomotive around the country. And so it turned out to be the latter. So there's only two, maybe three remaining sort of mainline steam locomotives left of the New York Central. There's two Mohawks, and I think there's a smaller like Mogul or something like that. And then of course there's 999, which is a 440, but that's also, not really a mainline locomotive.
I feel like you're forgetting 6721.
6721?
It's an 060.
Oh, it's an 060. Okay, that's the one.
But it actually is kind of, there's this fun little side story to this.
That's the one in Utica?
Yeah, it's the one in Utica that
got rear-ended.
It didn't get it's
like
runaway. I think it was a gondola, or no, it was a hopper, covered hopper cars or something. Runaway train ran into it, and because this engine was sitting there, it actually took the brunt of the force, and basically meant that the parking garage that people were in didn't collapse behind him. So,
oh my god,
like it's kind of a hero engine.
Well, I guess that's great.
About it. And it got refixed again in some way for still looks pretty good for getting smashed. But yeah, you want to tell them what this word?
Yeah, so what this is it's New York Central number 3001, which is a Mohawk, so it's a mountain as you'd call it in most other folks, but it's a 482. Is a beautiful mainline gigantic mixed use engine that they actually will be restoring, hopefully to run on the main line. So this was a joint effort between the Fort Wayne Historical Society, which they famously run nickel plate 765?
Yeah, 765.
765, yeah. And also the New York Central Museum in Elkhart, Indiana. So freaking fantastic this got done. I'm super excited for it. And anyone listening to this, they should donate money to it because that's how this stuff actually happens. So pledge some money, throw some bills. I'm sure it's tax deductible. Unfortunately, this is 3 days late for the 2024 tax season, but every little bit helps. So it'll be really great to see that up and running again. To see some sort of New York Central mainline steam power on the rails again is really cool. Not something I ever thought I'd see in my life.
It'd be kind of nuts to because we also have two Pennsylvania engines that might be like the K4, which is now still under restoration, but it seems like it's in good hands now. That potentially is going to happen soon. And the T1, the streamlined, 4444, that is being built from scratch by the T1 Trust. It'll be really cool to see one of those engines. They have to bring them together. Like I would be so like have them running. Like there's those iconic photos and paintings of a K4 next to a Hudson, going down the stretch just outside of Chicago, like just racing each other. And I'm like, that would give me. I would I got goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to see happen.
Also, Dan, you should design a shirt with that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. You should do that.
I'll put it on the docket.
By the way, the entire reason I said we're doing this podcast again is just so I can guilt Danny into doing things.
Whoa! Shit.
Whoa! See, look at that. For those listening at home or in a car, Dan's camera just fell on the floor.
I have it on a book. It's just sitting on a book right now. I don't have like a good.
We need to get you a better system. You spent all this money on like a microphone and everything like that, yet you're using a GoPro for your camera.
Well, I think the GoPro actually is. I think it's gonna be good. We'll find out in a second, but
maybe.
I need to get like a little
a mount or something.
Yeah, because actually right now the mount I have for it doesn't have any like. It only can go on like a hot or cold shoe. It can't go on like an actual tripod. So I have like
I remember this has been a problem.
Yeah, I've got like a freaking tripod sitting right here. I could have put it on, but I don't have the right mount for it. So anyway, I'll figure that out. Technical issue. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's gonna be really cool. It's a beautiful locomotive.
They've done a great job with 765 as well. Like that's been running all over Indiana, Michigan, Ohio. It's one of the ones that we really need to go out there and see again because we did get to see it once. That was a cool trip though. We got to when it was going up through the Lehigh Gorge, part of Norfolk Southern steam program. We got to see it and 425 in the gorge at the same time, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, that was like one of the top Railfan moments of my life. Seeing both of those, two gigantic mainline steam locomotives sort of on the move at the same time.
Also, Dan paced 765 as it was going into Jim Thorpe on the bicycle.
This is before Railbrothers, so I don't think I had my phone. I didn't have any way to record it at the time because my phone was dead, and I was using Billy's phone to take the videos with, which have since been lost, evidently. Billy,
we got one. Wait, no. You used one. The one video we have from that is from my camera.
Is that right?
The rest were from was from my phone. The rest of them were on yours, and as you said, are lost.
I didn't think I took any other videos because anyway. This is the locomotive. It's going to be really cool to see happen. And so this class of locomotives was used in mixed freight.
We're talking about the New York Central.
It was the New York Central 2001.
Again.
So it's a Mohawk, which is what they would call a mountain.
Think it's going to have the elephant ears?
I think it has them now, so I don't think they would. I don't know. That was sort of like a later addition.
I know. I'm like that's kind of like I know it's.
If they were going to pull it with the 1941 cars, I don't think they added them in 1941, but I don't know that. It's a handsome locomotive, so its driving wheels are not quite as big as the Hudson's.
Elephant ears are also called I think they're actually called smoke deflectors. They're basically like two pieces of iron that go up on two sides of the front of the engine that are designed to have the wind sweep smoke up and over the train instead of into people's faces and the engineer's face. Correct? Am I correct on that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that sounds okay, about right. So this is just such a big deal for the Railfan community because, one, how rare this kind of locomotive is with such a large railroad heritage that the New York Central has had and sort of mark on the country and how the country is built, like literally how the country is put together. There's shockingly few bits of rolling stock left over from sort of its prime era of hauling the most tonnage. So it's really great from like a historical perspective, and then it's also great seeing how well the parties involved were able to publicize the whole thing. And I think that's another thing that stood out about is how well they were able to spread the news, put out little teasers, generate buzz, which was really, really cool. So hopefully that's paying dividends for them and getting money to restore this thing. So help out with that cause, and that's pretty freaking exciting. So I'm excited. Billy, you're excited about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like Yeah, I know we joked that I'm like not a New York Central. I'm a New York Central fan. I like New York Central. I just like really it's just kind of come down to like I kind of live more near Pennsylvania Railroad stuff and you know.
And ironically, I live in Philadelphia. So like I'm like living and breathing Pennsylvania
you're giving
Railroad
spoilers,
heritage
giving spoilers.
every single
Get
day.
Get away. You're giving spoilers to people. They're going to watch it.
What?
The spoilers on the you're showing our whole list.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Oh, well.
All right. So what's the next one, Billy?
I don't know. What is it?
So this was not a very rail fan-y thing, right? Well, it is a rail fan. Hang on. It's not a steam engine thing, right? So I know...
Wait, it is a steam engine thing.
Was that?
You're talking about the oil burning conversions?
Oh, I was thinking... We're on the CRRC thing.
Yeah, you skipped one. So
I skipped one. So this one's a quick one. So I think a big trend in Britain right now, and less so in the U.S., but maybe becoming bigger in the U.S., is converting locomotives to burn oil instead of coal. So in Britain, I believe the last coal mines have shut down. Yeah, so in Britain, I believe the last coal mines are shut down, which means that like all the coal is becoming extremely expensive because they import it. And it's maybe of a different quality than they're used to, than the locomotives used to burning, et cetera, et cetera. So they're having to convert a lot of their or they're thinking about converting a lot of their locomotives to oil, which is very controversial over there. Over here, we still have a bunch of coal all around, so I'm not sure it's going to be such a big deal. However, there are some negatives to burning coal, such as increased fire risk, potentially more difficult to operate. So one of the big tourist operations, the Durango and Silverton, which is famous for running their narrow gauge steam locomotives up and down that beautiful gorge, just converted all their locomotives to oil burning. It seems like they did it successfully. So there have been unsuccessful oil conversions. I'm looking at you, Reading 2100.
The former owners of it, not the
former
current
owners
ones,
of it. I think we're all hopeful that the current folks are going to be able to do a better job with it. But Durango and Silverton, iconic line, converted all of their steam engines to burn oil. So they had
bought some diesels.
And
they used to not have any diesels, if I remember correctly.
That's a bummer. So this is sort of a similar thing that happened to the
diesels from White Pass, if I remember correctly. White Pass and Yukon, they bought some of their former diesels. Truthfully, I think their paint scheme looks pretty good on them. But,
that's cool.
But
I mean, narrow gauge diesels are still kind of cool. Narrow gauge everything is kind of cool. But you know, in one hand, it's probably good for the railroad because it's going to help them be profitable and exist into the future. On the other hand, a bummer for us preservationists because, you know, these were real artifacts that were there and operating basically in the same way they always have been for like freaking 100 years or something. So that's kind of a bummer. It's good that they're still going to be running, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opinion of like, you know what? It's probably more like there are plenty of these things stuffed and mounted somewhere. Not necessarily plenty, but there are a decent amount of them that are in original condition. Having things operate is very important, I think, for our community. Like, you know, that's how, like, a lot of times we get, you know, people to be interested in trains is, hey, I saw a cool steam train over there. That's crazy. And my opinion is if you can do it with coal, great. Like, you know, the Reading and Northern is doing a great job with it. It's a railroad that hauls coal. They're gonna if there's gonna be one holdout, it's them from converting. But if it also means not operating because, you know, there are certain dangers in it, and like, you know, the forest fire thing that they had a few years ago. I think they got officially, like, technically it wasn't them, but they had a lot of bad press saying it was them with their steam engines that started a big forest fire out there. But it also means that now they they wouldn't be able to operate their steam engines or operate at all when, you know, during, like, the forest fire season.
Which is something we ran into in New Jersey, and you can only imagine how bad it would be.
It's becoming more of a national thing. Like, it's not like there are droughts happening now in different parts of the country. So it's not just in just the West or something.
Yeah, so that's one headline, one big thing that happened, and I think maybe
I think they converted their last one this year.
Yep.
But yeah, as I said, I think it's kind of like if you can whatever I know came up with he brought up Reading 2100, and they actually just converted it from oil to coal again, and now they've announced
back to oil.
I think this was last year or the year before. They announced they're getting it back to oil, and they got a lot of flack for that. But really, it makes a lot of sense. It's going to be a traveling locomotive, and coal is harder to access now than oil is. So yeah, it might not have the same smell to it, but it's still working. And it's and the other part about it is that in the I know in Britain it's a big thing because they pretty much never had an oil-fired engine, right? They were pretty much all coal-fired.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, we have a long tradition going back, 100 years probably, at least, or more, of oil-fired engines. They're mostly out west, but it happened. It's a thing here. So it's not it's oh, this is some new thing. It was a way of making steam engines work.
Yeah, so definitely an important thing to note, but maybe just and
if it makes the communities that you're going through happier, that's always better for promotion, and then you stick around longer, and hopefully make more money or get more donations that way. You don't want to get those people angry.
Yeah, so the next one is the CRCC contract cancellation. So raise your hands if you know what that means.
I have no idea what that is. I have no idea. I saw he put it on his list. I'm like, oh, Danny, what is that?
So this is commuter rail gossip.
Wait. Save it for the podcast. So I'm just going to sit here and listen.
So what it is, CRCC, let me get it right. Basically, it's the state-run Chinese railway manufacturing company. So they make all the trains in China. They make a bunch of rolling stock for all the metros, the Chinese metros, and the Chinese intercity train system. And they also have been, for the past 10, 20 years, and particularly recently, been exporting a lot. And so they even they started a factory up in Massachusetts, and they went after a big MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority contract, to make new rail cars for them. Huge contract. It was 800 cars or some. It was hundreds of cars they're going to make for them. And so they set up a brand new factory for that. They talked a big talk, and then they also got a bunch of other orders from other transit organizations across the U.S. SEPTA was sort of late to it, actually. They were like, okay, well, I guess this is a real manufacturer. They actually have a bunch of these contracts. They're pretty close to delivering some cars. Let's have them build. They were the low bidder on SEPTA's bi-level car RFP. So there was another manufacturer that they undercut quite a bit. So SEPTA was going to save a bunch of money on this. So SEPTA was interested in double-decker commuter rail cars, basically to the same spec or a very similar spec to the New Jersey Transit bi-level cars, because they have very similar loading gauges. So everyone kind of thought that Bombardier was going to get the contract, but then this Chinese company got the contract. So lo and behold, many years later, now China-U.S. relationships have heated up quite a bit. For some reason, this Massachusetts factory has been not able to deliver really anything on time or within budget or really at all. Now, there could be a lot of things going on behind the scenes here, like geopolitical things. But that's just to say that SEPTA canceled their contract and is basically out millions of dollars, and now has kind of a hole in their rolling stock strategy moving forward before they start replacing, because they have other big purchases that they're doing right now, which are some other bits of news. But these bits of rolling stock that they thought they were going to have at a certain amount of time, that they even bought locomotives for. They bought electric locomotives to pull these trains, but now these trains don't exist. So now SEPTA's okay, well, what are we going to do with these locomotives? So they're trying to sell the locomotives. It's kind of a big mess. So it's unfortunate that they contracted with someone that couldn't deliver.
Can't they just recontract with somebody, or?
Yeah, they can, but at this point, it's not like you can just tell, like you can just make these tomorrow, right? No, they're gonna.
Obviously they'd be like a while, but like, did they officially like lose the money for this and have to use it again? Or
there's gonna be lawyers involved. People are gonna sue each other, and then it's also like the state-run company for China. So who knows where the money went, right? Like it could have gone abroad and then not gone anywhere. So it's funny because you could actually go to their website. I'm gonna go to the.
Are you gonna end up on a list, Danny? Are you gonna end up on a list?
Maybe I have a Chinese phone, so I mean
that's true. You're already on lists.
I'm already on the list, yeah. So like this is their website, and here's the coach, right? And it's like, in May, blah blah blah, and it's like delivered by the end of 2020. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah, but like we all know, like look at the Acela 2 right now.
At least the Acela, like they built them, like they're sitting, like they exist. They're sitting somewhere, They built them.
I guess so.
Like these don't even exist. They're just not existent. And you can see this like website has not been updated in years. So like who knows what is going on with it.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer. So that has some sort of ramifications for SEPTA Regional Rail. Now I think
SEPTA's been having bad luck with this kind of stuff. Like, cause they what were they? They wanted to do a couple expansions on their. I think it was the Roosevelt Avenue subway or something like that.
Oh, you're thinking of they lost a grant to extend the Norristown high speed line, have a branch line that would go to King of Prussia, which probably wasn't.
Well, no, there's that, and then there wasn't their whole thing about Roosevelt Boulevard.
Well, they haven't even tried to go after that yet. That's like a side thing.
I thought they had something for it, and then they like kind of blew it.
I don't think so. I think it's people at SEPTA don't think that project is viable, like that they don't have money to do it. People outside of SEPTA are pushing for it to happen because it makes a lot of sense. So
gotcha.
Because right now, obviously, SEPTA has operational issues. Like right now, they might not even be able to like run all the trains that they have right now. So they're trying to figure that out. And I think
aren't they like having like threats of strikes and stuff like that too?
Yeah, they got the strike thing figured out, but there was almost a couple strikes this year, and then there's almost a separate sort of budgetary cliff that they're going to fall off of. But this happens every few years with SEPTA, so take that with a grain of salt. The problem is it doesn't have like a super great dedicated funding source, so this doesn't really happen for New Jersey Transit as much.
Well, apparently New Jersey Transit doesn't really have a dedicated funding source either. That's an issue that they keep harping on recently. Like they're saying like, hey, this is some of the reasons why we haven't upgraded equipment and stuff like that, which is funny because I think almost all of New Jersey Transit's equipment is newer than the newest SEPTA
SEPTA is always like a rolling museum because the Silver Liner 4s.
Well, I guess no, like they have the Arrow 3s are still around.
Arrow 3s, are real old, but
yeah, they're about the same as the Silver Liner 4s.
They're very similar vintage to the Silver Liner 4s, yeah.
But still, like I know I keep hearing about like that being an issue with any kind of expansion with New Jersey Transit, whether it's expanding just amount of service or something like that. Plus, there's the tunnel issue and the Amtrak issue and all that.
But what I think this highlights is the lack of capability that America has to produce rail cars domestically, which is a big freaking bummer. So, oh well, we'll see what happens. Next thing I'm gonna go to. This one's
bring back Bud.
What's that?
Bring back Bud.
Bring back the Bud, man. I need the Bud. The other thing that's close to home for me is they announced some exciting procurement for the Market Frankfurt line. So I take the Market Frankfurt line, which is one of two.
Oh wow, that looks fun.
One of two subway lines in Philadelphia, or one of two SEPTA subway lines in Philadelphia. So Hitachi got the contract. Hitachi's a pretty good Japanese manufacturer.
Are they just upgrading the Market Frankfurt and not the Broad Street, or do they need like different types of rolling stock? Or?
There's a couple things going on there. You're actually digging at a very good question, which is that the Broad Street line's rolling stock was built by Kawasaki, I think, before the current M4 Market Frankfurt line stock, but the M4 cars have had extremely difficult maintenance issues, cracked trucks, cracked all sorts of things. The interiors are falling apart. I know this firsthand. And they actually need to replace those cars before the Broad Street Line cars. The Broad Street Line cars are actually doing pretty well because they're built by Kawasaki, like really reputable manufacturer. Like they really know what they're doing. Pretty high quality. Hitachi, I'm hoping, will be a similar high quality. So they didn't go with some, low budget, whatever the hell. So I'm really excited about this. What it looks like, it looks like they might have open gangways, which would be amazing.
Because the new New York subways have those, right?
Yeah, New York subways have that.
They debuted
it looks like
this
in this
year,
image,
right?
Was that?
The new New York subways, didn't they debut this year?
They did. Maybe I should have put that in here.
Yeah, because people care about that more than Philadelphia, like admittedly.
Yeah, that's probably. But I don't know as much about it, so I couldn't.
Yeah,
really...
we don't know about half of these things. We just read off things, Danny. Come on.
Well, this one, I know about this one a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
Let's see if I can...
Let's see. New York, new subway. Eat fresh.
I get out of here.
The R211.
There is
New York
another...
City subway car. Is that it? No, that's...
No, I'm still looking at it. Hey, let me have my Margaret Frankfurt moment.
Fine.
This doesn't look like it has open gangway, so... Because you can see that's probably where the driver sits right there. But, it's got nice... sort of more modern announcement boards. The seating seems to be much more practical. It's interesting because they have offset doors, so so they'd be lined up. I think that's to prevent people from sort of crowding at one door area. So that's interesting. Pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about this. So hopefully this happens. So what is it? It's the R211?
Yeah, the R211.
So if you guys aren't familiar with the concept of open gangway trains, it's basically instead of in most metro cars in the U.S. you cannot walk between cars, and that's actually quite a big problem because you'll have people crowding into one car. So you have one car that's basically more than at capacity, which will take more time for people to get in the car and off the car, and is also uncomfortable. But you might have the car right next to it being at a much lower capacity, and then most people will not feel comfortable, or they're actually not supposed to walk between the cars. People do it anyway, but you're not supposed to. So to go between the cars safely, you're supposed to get off at a station and go back in, but then you might not get back in, you lost your seat or whatever. So what a lot of European and Asian countries have are called open gangways, where you can see here the come on, I gotta get a nice picture of this. No. Okay, well.
Yeah, it looks like
is that you can just walk all the way through the train. There's no doors, which prevents that issue from happening. So the London Tube has a bunch of trains that do that. It's all over the world. So finally, New York got this with the R211, which is a big step up for them.
R211T. There's also R211A and S, which do not have those.
That's a bummer.
It looks like it's kind of just like a test for them. So looking at the like what it says they ordered, it looks like they ordered like looks like they have like 355 of the A, like 74 of the S, and 80 of the T. So, but it's interesting.
Yeah, so it presents
when reading about one of the
operational
benefits, it says, "Oh yeah, it'll help prevent subway surfing, as subway surfers can no longer climb between cars to reach the train's roof, as was possible in older trains and the A's."
Nice. Yeah, so it presents some operational issues because it's more difficult to break the train up and service each car individually. I think you can certainly still do it, but oftentimes you'll have to maintain all of these trains like as a big unit all in a line, kind of like what you do for a high-speed train. So operationally, it presents some issues because they might have to maintain it in a slightly different way than before, but certainly that's something they can figure out. And I don't think New York City is at a loss for maintenance facilities for their trains. So that's a pretty cool development on the rail front. Going back to Philadelphia, we've got another...
This is the only thing Danny cares about. He does not care about any of the other metro systems. Just Philadelphia.
The other one is the Philadelphia subway surface trolleys. We've got an update for that, where Alstom has been awarded the contract for that. Let me pull up a picture of that. It's pretty.
Are they going to replace the PCCs with this? Because I'll riot.
I don't know if they're supposed to replace the PCCs with it. They're certainly replacing the Kawasaki cars with it. So I like ride the Kawasaki cars almost every day. I love them to death, but man, they're of a very old style trolley. Like this is the old Kawasaki car. By the way, I sell shirts of them, so go to our Etsy shop, Etsy.com/Railbrothers, or Railbrothers.com. You can order your own Kawasaki shirts there, and hoodies. But they have the form factor of an old trolley. They have a bell that goes ding. They have a trolley pole that is just like has a wheel at the end of it. You have to step up to get onto it. It's all high level. There's doors on one side in this case. So it's all very retro. And it's basically like an old school trolley form factor. It has more modern electronics and it's quite efficient. And
when were they made?
Made about 1980. So they're old. They're what is that? Almost 50 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're definitely long in the tooth, but they're freaking tanks, right? They're freaking tanks. They get like hit by cars all the time. No big deal.
They occasionally go off the tracks and run into buildings.
And yeah, and I think that one's probably still running. Like, it's crazy. The building did not do as well as the trolley, from what I could gather. Like the PCC cars, they're a lot lighter, so they get dinged up a little bit more. These things are freaking tanks, and in Philly, they're
Like, truthfully, I'll miss them. Like.
Yeah, I'll miss them too. They have these nice big windows. They have like a classic trolley feel. Like it has, as I said, the form factor of a trolley, but there's some definite downsides to it. One is capacity. You can't get that many people in these trolleys. Two is accessibility. You have to step up to get onto them. And even me as an able-bodied person, like it's kind of difficult to get up and down them. I remember getting laughed at by a bunch of kids because I didn't know you had to step down into the well, and I had a bunch of stuff on me. Blah blah blah. So anyway, Alstom won the contract. They're going to get these super articulated low floor trolleys to replace them, or light rail vehicles if you want. If you see that they've got a pantograph there, so that's going to be a big change. And it's going to be a big structural change in West Philly in general.
Are they going to have to redo all the
stations is a big thing. All the stations have to. So right now the trolleys just stop. You just get on them. There's a curb. There's no actual station, generally speaking, outside of Center City.
Other than the PCCs, weirdly.
Yeah, the PCCs actually in Girard have like little tiny platforms that you can get up onto. And the PCCs also have an accessible door on them. They have like a little lift on them. The Kawasaki cars were built before the 80s.
The PCCs, which are made in like 1950, are more accessible than the ones made in 1980?
That is completely true. Because ADA did not pass until 1991, so it's not required to have accessible boarding.
But somehow they did it in 1950.
Yeah, well, because they had to, because they reactivated the 15 after the ADA Act, so they have to make it accessible.
So they had to that's why they retrofitted them. Got it.
So these ones, obviously, it has to be accessible, and that's also just good for everything, because it makes getting on and off the train or the trolley, or I wonder if they'll keep. I guess they're going to keep it with the trolley branding, much quicker. And the idea is it's going to be a total redesign, or sort of, what's the way to say it? They're not restructuring their routes, like where they go, generally speaking, but they'll be making it so they have actual stops. So right now they stop at every street corner. They're going to have it so it's at least every other street corner. The idea is they're going to have priority signaling, so they will stop at a
oh, that'd be good.
Accessible station. They'll have multiple doors opening up so people can get on and off really quickly. It'll be on the far side of any intersection, so they won't be hung up at a red light there. And then once they go, they'll have priority greens to the next stop. So that's gonna improve a lot of people's commute. It's gonna make it a much better way to get into Center City.
Curious, do you think this would, like, if these work well, would they reactivate some of the old lines that are kind of like in hiatus? Because Philadelphia has like at least 3 lines that are kind of like in a weird, like, they technically have made lip service to restoring them from being buses to trolleys, and they still have tracks in the city 30 years after they've stopped service.
Yeah, I mean, I highly doubt that they're going to expand any of the trolley service. Never say never, but the other trolley lines, work perfectly well as a bus, frankly. And they had some structural issues with them. One of them was super freaking long. It used to be the longest trolley line in the world, but there was no schedule. So if you have a freaking car blocking the tracks and it's a 20-some mile long trolley line, it backs up all the trolleys. They can't go anywhere. with this, it's going to be more intentional to make it really like a light rail system and capitalize that these trolleys go underground in Center City, scoot you in and out of Center City really quickly. So it's going to be a really big deal. I don't know if it's going to actually expand beyond sort of West Philly. I think there's some idea that they might do some sort of smaller interventions to link some of the lines out west, so you can kind of transfer between them more easily. But that's not happening. I can't imagine there's going to be any sort of expansion outside of that.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately. So it is what it is. And by this point, most of those trolley tracks have been paved over, which is a bummer.
Trending. The Roosevelt Boulevard subway will be worth every penny.
There you go. See, that's not SEPTA saying that. That's some buzz being generated. So this is going to be a big deal for Philadelphia. It's going to make the transit in West Philly a lot better. So I am very excited about this. It's going to be one of the better bits of light rail rolling stock in the US. When do they think
they're going to be kind of happening? And then plus 10 years.
I mean, this is Alstom's real. Like they're able to produce these things. They produce them all across the world. I think it's a rather handsome trolley.
I believe it's called light rail then.
Yeah. It's supposed to be happening relatively.
I want to know, what's your opinion? Difference in trolley versus light rail. Is there actually a difference in them, or is it just nomenclature because one looks cool and one doesn't?
Well, theoretically, if they have a trolley pole and a trolley wire, then I would say it's a trolley. So once it becomes like a more of a tension system and you don't have the trolley wheel and the trolley pole, then it's maybe not a trolley. But I think it's more of a cultural thing, frankly, because we call them trolleys in Philadelphia. If you go to New Orleans, it's very much the same technology. It's a streetcar there, right? They don't call them trolleys. Yeah. So I think it's a cultural thing.
They have a play about that, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. So famously, they're not called trolleys there. It's a streetcar. And then I think if you go at other places, they're called other things. Maybe trams. I think Europe prefers the word tram. So I think it's a cultural thing, but we call them trolleys here.
But where do you make the distinction? Is like light rail is just like, hey, it doesn't have a trolley pole, or is it like, hey, it has to be ADA, it has to be, high level, low level, something like that,
Well, yeah, light rail I consider usually if you have a what do you call like a heritage system, one that's never got dismantled in the 1950s through 70s, I think those qualify to be a trolley. Anything built after that, even if it resembles those trolley lines, will have modern compromises, generally speaking, that make it different than those older systems, except for like maybe a couple that actually built them to the specifications of the old streetcars. So anything built sort of after the 70s, I would consider a light rail. But
gotcha. So you don't some make people any distinction of like, hey, percentage of amount running on the street.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. It's like kind of light rail. Light rail implies that it has a grade separate, or sorry, not grades. I guess it is grade separated. Yeah, there's some sort of grade separation.
I think you're looking for dedicated right away.
Yeah, dedicated. Yeah, exactly. So light rail will have the implications is more dedicated right of way than a trolley. Certainly, a streetcar in its name implies it's basically doing street running the whole time, which is kind of less than ideal from a efficiency perspective. There's a sort of cultural thing about that, especially in New Orleans, where it's fantastic, like being on this old trolley, it's grinding along, people are running next to you. And it's part of the culture of New Orleans. Like maybe you don't really need to go anywhere on time, right? It's kind of part of the culture. Or maybe like same thing in Porto in Portugal or something like that. So in that case, that's a really great asset to the city and to the culture and to the people. But if you're kind of trying to get somewhere quickly and transport the most amount of people in the least amount of time, you want a dedicated right-of-way and not to share it and have level crossings with other modes. Anyway, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's it. I was just curious what your like.
At least that's my take on it.
Opinion on it, because
so
I feel like it's one of those things that everyone kind of has a little opinion on it. So.
Yeah, so we have like a heritage system here in Philly, but there are areas where they have their own dedicated right-of-way.
And like famously underneath the city center, which is kind of where you most want to actually have a dedicated right-of-way, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's called the Center City Subway Surface Tunnel, and that's also the West Philly lines are sometimes called the subway surface lines because it's a subway and then they go on the surface. on the roads. So they definitely have that dedicated right of way. And then certain further out west in West Philly, they have their own dedicated right of way in certain places. So they definitely straddle the line there. But that was pretty typical back then too. You know, if the trolley company or the transit company had enough money, they could just buy a right of way outright and not have to share it with the road. So anyway, what was the next item? I think we talked about East Broadtop restoration.
Yeah, so they made some progress. So obviously if you want to catch up on everything, what was it, back in 2020 they announced that they were reopening, like at the height of the pandemic, after being closed since like 2011. Historically, this was the really cool thing about East Broadtop is that it was a narrow gauge line in Pennsylvania that was like meticulously, it was like just left for like, and the way it was in like when it was went from, I guess not common carry, what's the, like, you know, it went from being a working railroad to a tourist railroad. Almost everything is preserved. All the bunch of the infrastructure, a bunch of the shops are like pristine. They look like they're just straight out of like 1920s, probably earlier. Previously it was a route that would be hauling coal from the mountains of central Pennsylvania to the Pennsylvania Railroad main line, where they would get, which really cool thing where they did a transfer. They can either transfer it manually, or they had a thing where they could like lift up the cars and put them on standard gauge trucks to be sent out on the Pennsylvania Railroad to points on.
But I think this one's sort of unique in the list in that it's not exactly the biggest piece of new news, but I thought it was important to include it because of their consistency. So they were able to reopen the railroad, run engines on the line, restore a steam engine. They have several other ones as well that they're under restoration.
Also, but the cool thing about it is all the steam engines are totally original to that railroad.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Some of them like,
but they have like what, 5-6 engines?
Yeah. But I think the thing that is distinguishing them at the moment that I wanted to highlight that's important is they continue to restore like miles and miles of their original right-of-way, which is something I haven't really heard of a lot of railroads doing in modern times. I think what's the one out west, the Cumbres and Toltec or whatever, Cumbres? How do you say that?
I don't know.
This is where our Western friends will be able to help us out, because I've never been out there. I've only seen it like written. I've never seen anyone say it out loud. Anyway,
we'll have to make a trip out there just to find out
how to say
it.
If anyone have any pointers for that, let us know. I think that one might have done some track restoration and kind of rebuilt old abandoned right of way. The other one that comes to mind is the WWF, the Watertown. Is it WFNF?
Worldwide Wrestling Federation?
Wiscasset, Watertown, and Farmington Railroad.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Hey, I think you got it right. That sounds right.
Hey, there we go. Okay. So that one is like they did this for the entire. That one they restored that entire track. It was completely abandoned. I think they rebuilt it, but that was a while ago. Where this is
really cool because to give you an idea, they had they've been operating since like 1956 on the same 4.5 mile stretch from Orbsonia / Rock Hill to Colgate Grove and back. And that's like, if you see any of the photos like from the tourist era, that's the part it went on. The cool thing is now they've made a point. Hey, we restored this. We restored a steam engine. We're restoring another steam engine. And guess what? We're going to go further. We're going to open up part of the lines and this is more up the mountains, up into the hills, that hasn't been open since 1956.
Pretty crazy.
It's really exciting. They have opened up, what is it? How far did they get?
I think it's more than a mile at this point.
I think they got more than a mile at least. 1.3 mile stretch to an overhead bridge at Jordan Summit. And they're going to march to Salito or Saltillo? How do you say that?
We were there, and I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, but basically, it's a campaign to open 9 miles, 9 more miles of track, which is really exciting because like. How many times do you actually hear of like a tourist railroad actually like, hey, we're expanding, we're gonna build more track? Actually, one of the other cool things recently, I don't know if that happened. I think this was like a couple years ago, but the Delaware River Railroad, the Bell Del, here in New Jersey, actually has been doing the same thing. They were restoring their track down to from Phillipsburg, New Jersey, along the Delaware River, towards Regalsville, and they reached that in the last last couple years. I actually took the train down there. It's kind of cool. You can get off the train at Regalsville now and go to like a little restaurant, and then get back on the next train. It's kind of fun. You still there, Danny?
Yeah, I'm still here. My camera died.
So you'll just have to look at my pretty face, everyone.
We'll see if it comes back.
Let's see, Delaware. When did they do that? Probably telling you things that are like 10 years ago. I'm like, oops. Let's see here. When did they reach it? I don't find anything in there. So I think it was in the last couple of years that they did that. So that's actually kind of cool. Like there are a few... there are some of the tourist railroads around that are actually expanding their lines. I know Black River near us has been trying to do it, but they got kind of hindered by a hurricane a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yes, so cool that they got hindered by a hurricane. Yes.
No, that the East Broad Top is expanding. That's was that the same one that, like when I had my wedding train? Was that?
Yeah, that was the same one. So it hit New Hope and Black River, but on Black River the problem is that they were trying to get to Lambertville from Ringo's. And there are several bridges across that creek. And they all got like completely wiped out. Like they got like I remember actually seeing like before your wedding train, because Dan for his second wedding again. Yeah, it was COVID. You just had weddings for fun.
We were
right?
just figuring it out.
So he booked a train on the New Hope for a wedding, which is great. A New Hope Railroad. Let me get it right. They've rebranded. There you are. And right the week beforehand, what hurricane was that? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but
there was a big hurricane that came through.
Totally screwed up everything. I had to totally scramble because I thought the New Hope, because I saw pictures of some of the bridges, like, oh, there's no way this is going to happen.
One of the pictures you see was actually one of the pictures from Black River, on the part that's out of service.
Yeah.
But that bridge got completely taken out, and you're just like, that's not getting restored in a week. But to give the New Hope guys credit, they got
it together in a couple days.
Like we passed by at one point on the train. They're like, "Yeah, this is the first train across."
They came through, and it was really cool.
Like you see all the construction equipment right there. So it was.
I think they weren't able to go as far as they originally wanted to with my train, but they. But the cool thing is they basically went back to New Hope. Is like, look, it didn't go as far as you like originally contracted for it. Let's just run it out again. And so we ran it out again. We all got drunk on board. Had a freaking great time.
It was pretty
10
fun.
out of 10 recommend. If you can rent a train and get drunk on it.
Just rent a train, rent a steam engine, just rent the whole thing.
Yeah, just go for the whole thing.
But yeah, so that was. Did it go away again? Or?
Yeah, it died again.
Get a real camera, Danny.
Well, it is a real camera.
Get a real webcam.
Well, I think in a way it's better than a real webcam. I just didn't charge it up
my webcam
before.
is not doing this.
I guess that's true. I do have a. Where the hell is the? Oh, hang on.
But let's see, what's the next thing on our thing? So, but actually, we're talking about that. I think Black River they're trying to get a little bit further with that. I think getting back to Boone Station or something, which is just like about a mile south of Ringo's or something. I think they're trying to reopen that sometime soon, but they're a volunteer organization, so you can only go as far as you got volunteers. Whoa, you got a different camera now? Wah. What camera is this?
This is like a crappy webcam.
Yeah, that is pretty crappy. But it's a camera nonetheless.
It is a camera.
So we'll go with that.
All right. I'm back.
Yeah. Good. I've vamped enough. What do you want to talk about now?
What was next? We had
Caltrain electric train debut.
Oh,
I don't know anything about this other than there's electric trains now.
I mean, that's basically all there is. Which maybe to like someone the uninitiated would be, you'd think, oh, that's not a big deal, but it's a pretty big deal. The lighting doesn't look good for this anymore. Oh well, whatever.
Yeah, but it works right now. So
yeah, it works. Yeah.
Figure it out for episode 2, Danny.
So I mean, think about it for a commuter train, having a diesel locomotive, they take a while to spool up. They're kind of limited to like 3,000 or 4,000 horsepower. Usually, most commuter agencies only put one on each train. Your trains, if they become more popular, become quite long, which means that it takes them quite a while to get up to speed. And then in a mile or maybe 2 miles, they have to slam on their brakes, stop, and then notch it all the way up, and then just do that all over again, right? So it ends up being, you can do it. It can be successful. Look at Toronto, look at other cities with like mostly diesel service. But it's somewhat less than ideal. So California chose to invest big time in modern European-style commuter trains, or regional trains, as we might add them, because we don't like the term commuter anymore. Ideally, you can use your transit system any time of day, and it's not just for people going into Center City and out of Center City for the 9-to-5ers, but like you go into the city for a show, you go on the shop, you go out to the burbs for something else, right? So regional rail, right? We want to be able to use this transport.
Oh, those do look funky. Look at those. They do look funky. I'm looking at the link.
Yeah, so they're very modern. I actually forget who made them, but they're double-decker, right? They're double-decker electric trains.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, so they strung up very modern constant tension wires, which is important out there, but really anywhere, because it allows the power, the overhead wires, to have more reliable operation. They're going to be able to keep their wires consistently taut no matter what the temperature is.
Stadler. Who made
so they electrified their entire line from San Francisco all the way down the bay. It's all double track. They redid a lot of stations. Really invested a lot of time and money and effort into making this a world-class system. And from what I can tell, it is. It's like doubled ridership in the COVID era in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Oh, wow. Really?
It's pretty great. So obviously that was needed. So think about what an electric train can do. Is that basically it just taps into an electric power source. It doesn't need to generate the power on board, which means it just has a motor and some transformers on it, which means it has essentially, I'm not going to say unlimited power, but it's more limited, at least in SEPTA's case, it's more limited by the transformers that are serving the overhead wires than really by the train itself. So you could put a really big motor on it and you could have a really fast train. It's called a high-speed train, right? These ones, they have a slightly smaller motor geared to just get it up to a reasonable speed, say like 60 miles an hour, really quickly, and then brake again, often using regenerative braking from the electric motors. That's all to say they have a much better power to weight ratio than your typical diesel-powered commuter train. Allows it to get up to speed super quick, allows it to brake super efficiently, and it can just do that all day long, rinse and repeat, no problems. It's significantly faster than the diesel alternative. So they were able to shorten trip times, increase frequency, and lo and behold, it doubled the usage. So it just shows you that for public transportation, or just any sort of transportation that you have to have a schedule for, that frequency is freedom. So if you go to a bus stop and you have to wait a half an hour, that's like potentially a whole half an hour added to your total trip. And if you have a transfer again, that only happens every half hour. That's a whole hour added to your trip. If that happens, if there's every 7-minute service, then if you divide that in half, because that's the most likely.
Wait. Is this going to be every 7-minute service?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm just making this up.
7 minutes is like a pretty reasonable amount for like a rapid transit service, and it's possible.
I don't think this is rapid transit though.
It's certainly possible with the infrastructure they have. So, like, so the Shinkansen.
It's possible with SEPTA too, but it ain't happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, in certain places at SEPTA at peak hours on the main line, you probably do get close to that going into Center City. Yeah.
I guess it's true when they
because all the different lines come together and it's probably pretty close to that. So it's definitely possible.
These are made by Stadler, which is a these are Stadler, which
are they German? Are they Dutch?
That's what I just saw it. What are they? I want to say it's Sweden, Swiss or Sweden.
Swiss. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They bought the Swiss watches of the train world.
Exactly.
Except and the Swiss, man, they know how to do a train system. Holy hell.
But they're called KISS trains.
Yeah.
Heh.
So they're electric multiple unit trains, right? So they've got...
Is this where they were, the same line where they were using the AEM-7s to test?
Yes, that's the same line, yeah.
Got it.
So it seems like this has been a huge success from what I could tell, which...
Cool.
I'm excited about. I haven't been out there. When I was out there last, they had just started construction of this. Theoretically, this would be the same line that would take California high-speed rail into San Francisco.
Okay, cool. So it's
if
kind of
that
part
ever
of that
happens.
whole thing. It'll happen. I know everybody's kind of down on it, but like,
yeah,
they're building it. Something's
they're building it, but they're not actually connecting it to the cities.
Yeah, but
which is potentially an issue.
It's potentially an issue, but I also see that I see the strategy in it of being like, especially politically, now, hey, look, we built this whole thing out in the middle of nowhere. Now you got to give us more money to connect it to the cities. So, I see that. As a strategy, I kind of see that, and I'm like, that kind of might work for political wise, if you're
that's what Philadelphia did with the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's like up on the hill with the Rocky Steps. Is they built the two ends of the museum
first.
Did
they really?
Yeah, so they're like, okay, we're gonna build two ends and only build the middle at the very end to raise money because it's gonna look really freaking dumb with these two things on the side.
Oh, that's a bit. But yeah, I guess that kind of could that might work because otherwise you just have. I feel like they would just be like, we got far enough from San Francisco, we got far enough from LA, we don't care anymore. Which is not the point of high-speed rail. So, I don't know. I think this might actually...
And this is a good segue to a different item. So,
we gotta skip a few and go to Brightline West.
Brightline West. So, Brightline is a private passenger train operator in the U.S. They have the Brightline in Florida. Did you take that? You saw that, right?
I didn't take it. I did see it, though. I got some video of it. And... much to the commenters' chagrin, no cars got hit with the train.
Well, I think where you were at has its own dedicated right of way, right? And it's
no. I was the places like I saw it on the own dedicated right of way, but that's just like straight along a highway. But then I got some videos of it basically coming off of that,
and into the cities
onto the regular one, and I could see how there are so many. They say have so many accidents because really there's crossing after crossing after crossing after crossing. And they're not small roads either. These are like giant stroads. For those who don't know what a strode is one of those. It's like one of those roads that have like.
It's a street. It's the worst things of a street and the worst things of a road combined. So a street is supposed to be something that serves like local businesses. So it's lower speed. A road is supposed to be something that kind of takes you from A to B in an efficient, fast manner. And so, like, in that kind of way, like a limited access highway would be like a road. But a street would be like where you live with, little mailboxes on it and stuff. A strode combines the worst aspects of both of them. So it's got, signalized intersections at grade, multiple lanes, pretty high speed, and then just like a bunch of big box stores going onto it and people turning in and off of it at the same time.
Yeah, so basically what you have here is the line parallels a strode, at least through the towns I was looking at it. Parallels a strode. And then you have a bunch of strodes crossing the track and that road. So you basically have a bunch of high traffic intersections right where the track is. And so people, if they stop and they stop at the wrong point in it, Like, and they like, oh, you know, if they stop on the track because there's not a train there right there, the gates could come down and then they have to get out of there. And, you know, it's just not, and like there's people crossing a million different ways and stuff like that. It's like, I think they're like, in my opinion, they should probably at least put in like four-way crossing gates.
Yeah.
If not, like, just figure out a way to,
because they only have one crossing gate on each side, which is probably all they need, like, legally required to have, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so it is the Brightline regular one in Florida seems to be doing reasonably okay, so much so that they're ordering more coaches for their trains. They don't turn a profit, from what I could tell, but this was largely a real estate move.
Which is interesting, because that's actually the way that a lot of the Japanese railroads were built, as real estate, and truthfully, as a lot of like the and Hong Kong too, and a lot of the inner urbans and stuff in the United States. Weirdly, like in a lot of the trolley lines.
Yeah, so it's a throwback to kind of how it used to be, where you buy a bunch of land, build a railroad to it, and then sell it, and that's like your big profit driver.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, in the Japanese one is not that they're selling it necessarily. They usually hold on to it and then they develop it.
Yeah, so I think it's a mixture of both of those happening for Brightline, because they got assets from the Florida East Coast Railway. They own like big chunks of like downtown Miami, so I think they're going to do pretty well with that. So it seems like the service is popular enough that they're ordering more cars, and my understanding is that they put all their cars in service and they scale up in the way you think that it would, they will have 1/3 of the ridership of the NEC in a few years, which is
makes sense, because like I was looking, because of timing wise I couldn't end up taking one of them, but I was looking at their timetable and it was almost hourly service from Orlando to Miami.
That's cool.
So I was like, that's pretty neat. Like, I think
but that's actually not the news. So that is the Brightline. So the Brightline is the brand. There is the Brightline West, which we were talking about. California, the California High Speed Rail is the other big high speed sort of government run effort going on right now. It's under construction.
And keep in mind, Brightline East is not really high speed. The highest speed gets like what, 150?
110, I think.
110? Yeah, it's not even 150. So it's like 100. It might go to 125. I forget.
It's higher speed.
Yeah.
And that only happens on the area that's the new built construction next to a highway, which that's really what Brightline is pioneering. They're basically saying or thinking like, hey, United States, we have a bunch of leftover or really great right-of-ways that are out there, both either existing freight right-of-ways, which is kind of what they did in Florida East Coast, which, you know, it's a pretty straight right-of-way. Yeah, it's got a lot of level crossings. And then the other kind of low-hanging fruit is they're saying, oh, we have all these interstate highways or limited access roadways that have gigantic medians all over them and big green patches in between, that if you just plop down some rails in the middle of and put some wires up, you could run a train really freaking fast. So that's what they're deciding to do. It's a lot cheaper. It has some downsides to it in terms of like capacity, top speed, and also sort of the usefulness of the stations and where they put them. But if it's an area that doesn't have any stations, this seems like a really efficient way to build it. So that's what they're doing for Brightline West. Is it I-70 that's out there that goes? So it's from. It's tentatively from LA to Las Vegas. It's not actually from LA to Las Vegas. It's from like some random town kind of in the LA area to the outskirts of LA. Rancho Cucamonga. Rancho Cucamonga.
Wow. It's Route 15. It's going to parallel.
Route 15. Okay.
And it's going to Rancho. Where is it? Is there a thing on the thing we linked? They should probably tell us this. Rancho Cucamonga. Okay,
yeah, see, I know what I'm talking about here. so anyway, so it's a
like, wow, I thought that was just kind of being like, yeah, all right, yep, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a different way. So it's interesting to compare and contrast the two tactics. So one is like the California high-speed rail is like super traditional high-speed rail, brand new right-of-way, like huge viaducts, huge tunnels. It's going to be super well engineered. That train's going to be able to go like 220 miles an hour for like a big chunk of it. Really not a whole lot of corners cut. So once it's all operational, it'll be a truly world-class, really impressive system. The only problem is by the time they complete it, we might be dead. So who knows? And then this other one, which is, private corporation getting government-sponsored loans, and then also some private investment to make it happen, but also kind of cutting some corners on the infrastructure side of it. It's not going to be able to be 220 miles an hour for the whole length of it. There's certain areas where the highway climbs in and out of a pass that's going to have super tight turns. It's going to restrict it to like 90 or 60 miles an hour. There's a YouTube channel I watch called Lucid Sue that does like a whole breakdown of it. I would actually recommend it.
So Brightline West is going to just follow the highway then, instead of utilizing any of the track that's going there already?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's and there's like big stretches of it that are just extremely straight. So let me just bring up.
Oh yeah, no, I've driven on it a bit.
Yeah,
so.
And it's like almost iconic, like how straight some of those roads are.
Yeah, but like as you said, there are significant hills and like ridges and mountain ranges in there. So, like you have to get over the famous Cajun Pass.
Cajon?
Is it Cajon? I can't say things anymore.
I don't know.
Cajon.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're more able to work with the government and get access to that right of way than to get access to like the freight railroads right of way, which is what they did for Florida East Coast, was because they were by the Florida East Coast.
Yeah, at the time. I think they got spun off officially now.
Oh, is that right?
I believe so.
But either way, they were definitely...
If you look at where Rancho Cucamonga is, though, it's in the LA like basin. So like it gets over the mountains in theory. And the interesting thing, I was just out in Vegas this summer for work, and I think they've started construction. Or at least,
my understanding they're just doing
land.
Pre-construction borings and whatnot. So is this their train?
Yeah. But like there was an area where it was like, oh, what are they building here? This is a big area. I'm like, oh, this is Brightline West. Whoa. And it's like right kind of near one of the UP yards. So that's why I was like, oh, what's this?
So their station's going to be around here. So basically, they're going to build a big parking lot here, or parking garage. You would take Metrolink into LA Union Station. Now, it's obviously pretty low-hanging fruit for the government to come in and say, hey, we're going to do the same thing we did for Caltrans, but for this particular line. And then you can run the whole thing all electrified all the way in, which would be super cool. And maybe that gets done by the time... Is LA hosting Olympics? I think they are.
I think they are, actually.
I don't think it's going to be done in time,
years.
but it would... Yeah. Anyway, pretty neat. And that's like actually happening from what I can tell. And they've awarded Siemens, so they're going to buy these trains, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
Anyway, we're... so...
Anything else on here? You want to do the Amtrak thing?
Yeah, so I guess the other thing that I think is interesting is both Amtrak and Via Rail have put out RFPs, requests for proposals, to replace their long-distance equipment, and they're quite different. So Amtrak is interesting because they're sticking with the double-decker concept, the sort of replacing the superliners, which are most of their current long-range, long-distance fleet. But it has some significant challenges, because how do you make, right now, there's really no accessible access to the second floor of any of those coaches, which are where most of the amenities are on the Superliner. So they're really not accessible. So if you were to try to buy them new now, they would have some big problems there. So they're trying to work around that and make it an accessible system. I
guess you could make it so it's all on the... Like, the Superliners all connect on the top level to each other. I guess you could make it so they all connect on the bottom level, and the top level is kind of the extra area.
Yeah, but that actually doesn't work because you'd still have to get above the trucks. So there'd be steps to go above the trucks and then back down again, which is what they have right now. Is like there's a lower level to get on the bottom. So what they're doing
is it that because they can't make it high enough to make it above the trucks entirely, the first level?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because there's single level cars that don't have a step up.
Yeah, but they have typically a high level platform you board from.
Oh, so the problem is that you're the boarding from the low level platform.
Yeah, so they board from the low level platform. So what they're trying to do is actually have like tiny elevators inside the train, which is pretty cool if they can get the whole thing to work. But the
still,
practical
how do they
issue,
get people to the first level then? If it's a low level platform, they don't have.
Well, so it's low level, but it is level boarding with the low level. If that makes any sense. So you could get a wheelchair and go into the bottom. Like it only needs to be like a 6-inch. I forget exactly how.
Got
it's
it. So there is
like a 6-inch curb.
Yeah.
And you.
I think I remember from the Superliners I went on. I feel like there was just straight up steps going up to it.
Well, right now it's steps to get up to the second floor. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a step or two to get up to the first floor. Like I don't remember if it was completely level boarding. I don't think.
You might be right, but it's
depending
pretty
on,
low that you would only need to.
Trying to remember. Yeah, I don't remember. But
yeah, it's pretty low. So it would be pretty low hanging fruit to make that door at the bottom accessible, and then they would need to have an elevator up to the second floor, which is the concept they're going with now.
It still seems like a kind of more, not the low-hanging fruit of just raising, figure out a way to get the floor up high and just building high-level platforms or something.
Well, I think then you just use single-level regular coaches.
Why can't people use double levels all the time?
Well, because if you raise the bottom, then you don't actually have headroom to have the double-decker.
Got it. So I thought they still had, since it's out, most of them go out west. They had more room than us East Coasters.
I think they do, but I think they're still trying to keep it within the same loading gauge they've got now.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So basically, what their concept is they have literal elevators inside the train to get you from the bottom to the top. So they'll have like 2 cars, and there'll be more fixed sets instead of individual cars, and you'll have 2 cars maybe that on either end that have the elevators in them, which allows someone in a wheelchair to get all the way up to the top and go all the way across the train. And then more accessible units, accessible bathrooms. I think you're going to end up having less seats per car in general, so it's not going to be as efficient, so I'm not sure how that's going to exactly work. So I do wonder if they just end up having more corridor-style trains in the end. So that's something that's the Amtrak way that they're doing it right now. Let me see if I could pull up the plans that they published. Here we go. So it's pretty interesting just like how different the two approaches are. So anyway, the Amtrak is going with basically replacing the Superliners with similar double-decker equipment. Via Rail is basically looking to replace their iconic, 1950s Bud stainless steel rail cars with cool-looking, sleek, single level rail cars as well, with like a new modern dome roof. But anyway, this is the Amtrak concept. So what we got, an accessible coach end car. The yellow is an elevator. So they have an elevator here in the second car, an elevator in the sixth car, and that basically lets you go board from the very bottom, go all the way up to the top, and then you have access to the entire train on the top. And then I guess they're saying that they'll have a couple rooms at the end that are not accessible, so they can cram more seats in them. So that's looking like the bedroom sleeper to the utility car, like current cars, and the accessible ones would be new cars.
Gotcha.
So that's an interesting concept. I think it's going to be great for accessibility and to get people, make it so the train is more usable for all sorts of folks.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And whatnot. But it will decrease the sort of utilization rate of the train a little bit, which is not going to help their bottom line necessarily.
Well, maybe they could run more trains.
Maybe run more trains. Yeah. So.
Hey, I see the list again. I see the list.
Let me pull up the render that Via. So Via is just going completely opposite. Basically, they're gonna replace their train with something that's kind of cool, sleek, and modern, but basically is replacing one for one their current trains. Both cool windows and some other cool stuff. So they released a sort of teaser, and ultimately, I don't know how these will look because this is just an RFP. Many people could bid on it, and it could look like this, or it also could not. But look at this; it's like a cool, sleek-looking, modern dome car, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got these kind of almost Viewliner-esque windows here. So that looks really neat. It's a bummer that the Bud equipment probably needs to get retired, but
that stuff's old.
It's really old, yeah. Probably needs some well-earned rest from being on the rails so long. So that's pretty exciting. But
I was going to say, that kind of looks almost the style of like the Rocky Mountaineer stuff.
Yeah, it looks like it also kind of looks like some of the Japanese like high-end sleeper trains that they have, and also some. So yeah, it looks.
But you said that's just a concept, so they don't even really have anything yet, right?
Yeah, this is just a concept render, so it could look like really anything. But I think they're stipulating probably size of glass and the dome and all that kind of stuff. But the feedback that Amtrak got is they initially, some of the manufacturers weren't thinking that they were going to be able to manufacture it to their specifications. I do think that you can get an elevator in there. So I can't imagine that you couldn't engineer an elevator to work well in a train. Or even that there isn't an elevator in a train. I'm sure there is one anyway somewhere in the world. Like there are elevators in ships, and ships are going to move like way more left and right than a train. You won't get as much vibration, that's for sure.
I was going to say, but ships are much bigger.
They're bigger, but it's not all the ships are bigger, frankly.
Yeah, it's going to be like a tiny elevator kind of thing. I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like the it being not vertical is not going to be an issue because clearly you can make them work in other places that it's not vertical necessarily all the time. The vibrations could be an issue though, so I don't know. So that's going to be a interesting thing to follow.
Cool.
Yeah, we've been talking for like 2 hours now.
This is what we do.
This is what.
Let's go. All right, what's the next one? I want to talk about Western Maryland 202. So this is an interesting one because it's kind of like a lot of it's like. Let's see here. Let me click on the thing so I can know what I'm kind of talking about.
You're on your own here.
Yeah, I know. So it's a 462 Pacific locomotive.
And it has one of those extended smoke boxes.
Yeah, originally Western Maryland Railroad. Currently, it's in a city park in Hagerstown, Maryland. It has a roof over it, but it's kind of like on the route for condition. And apparently, Hagerstown is kind of like they don't really want to deal with it anymore. And there are rumors that they are going to try and donate it to the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. Oh. Which I personally think is pretty cool. Like Western Maryland, they do have their hands full with, what is it, 1319? Is that right?
1309.
1309. They might be trying to restore their consolidation as well.
Mountain Thunder.
Yeah, which I would love to see run again, but I hear mixed reports on how it is. They
they're officially like working on it. Did you see their press release today?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah, they have it in the shop. They bought. Looks like they bought tubes for it. Looks like they're doing a boiler. They're gonna measure do the whole ultrasonic on the boiler. Like, looks like they're actually doing stuff.
Yeah,
which is pretty fantastic. They're gonna take the cab off. So anyway, that was actually hot off the press today. It's technically 2025 news, so I can't really talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk. It works into this one because, as I said, the rumor like Hagerstown, we're looking to like donate it to Western Maryland so they can use it. Yeah. Now, the question is in a lot of the Railfan circles that I've seen a lot of the talk. So first of all, interestingly enough, there is a group of Railfans who want to keep it in Hagerstown. Oh. Who have been, I guess, working on it in some way, shape, or form, keeping it and they don't want to give it to Western Maryland.
Huh.
So there's like a group that's like Save 202, Western Maryland 202 on Facebook, that is campaigning against it going to a tourist railroad, which is kind of seems weird to me. But I also kind of get it. If you've been like working on it your whole time, and it truthfully, if Western Maryland has 2 other steam engines that they're working on, is this going to get their priority, or is it just going to like rot away somewhere?
Yeah, I think it's just going to sit there probably.
But it also is kind of interesting because it is an actual Western Maryland locomotive.
Yeah, I mean, it would be appropriate.
As I said, I think it would be cool. I don't know enough to say if it there's whether it's big enough to work on to be able to pull one of their trains up the line, because I know that was one of their problems they were having with 734. Is that rolling what the Mountain Thunder is?
Did they actually have problems with it though?
I don't know. I kept hearing that they were not necessarily problems, but they were just saying that their trains were getting long enough that like it was having trouble, yeah. And they would have to have the diesel to support it.
Well, definitely, I don't think a Pacific could make it up there.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too. So, but as I said, it's kind of an interesting dynamic of there's an interesting drama happening in the Railfan community of being like, some of them want it to stay as a static display, which truthfully you don't usually hear that much. You usually are like, hey, I want this to move.
Is this eventually the restore it and run it on the main line sort of movement?
Exactly. But yeah, so it's just kind of an interesting thing. As I said, I personally, if Western Maryland can do it, go for it. But truthfully, hearing that they're working on the consolidation again kind of is like, yeah, maybe not. But
yeah, I wonder if that was them sort of maybe not so subtly saying that we're already doing all this stuff. Yeah,
could be. That's all it is on that. It's kind of like mostly kind of like rumors and just drama stuff happening on that. Mostly on Facebook. Do you have anything to add to that, or you want to go on to the next one?
Go to the next one.
Next one is, I want to go see this engine. I truthfully wasn't paying attention to this at all. The Arcade in Attica, which it seems like a really cool railroad that is in Western New York. I think kind of near Buffalo. They have some really cool like 44 tonners out there that are like, have a really cool paint scheme. They're like famous for like I think when we were at the Railfan Railroad thing, you saw some photos that Steve Barry did of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like,
was that like on the lake or that lake?
Yeah, that was those lake shots.
Oh,
so
that's that
they
railroad.
just finished
Dang.
restoring their steam engine, number 18. It is a smaller consolidation built in Paterson, New Jersey, at Cook Locomotive Works in 1920. And it seems like it's it went to the Arcade in Attica in 1962. But as I said, they just finished restoring it, and I want to go up there and see it. It seems interesting. They had so little trouble. They finished kind of restoring it, I think, back in like doing some test firings in August, and they passed it with the FRA inspections in it. But then they had a little on their debut things. They had a little trouble, something I'm not sure, but so they had to redo the debut about a month later. But it seems to be running good now, so I kind of want to go see that. So cool. This is more of me just trying to sell Dan in being like, hey, we need to go out there to Western New York to go see a little consolidation, because this is what I like. I like
cute
engine. I like little steam engines,
I mean, it's a consolidation. It's not that little.
But it's like on the smaller side.
It is small for a consolidation.
Like I don't. Let's see. What is the? Does this have any of the boiler pressure or any of that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah, it's got a little tiny boiler. It looks like.
Yeah, it looks probably around the same size as 40, maybe a little smaller.
It kind of looks like it was made in the 1890s, but made in the 1920s.
Well, the interesting thing is it's made in Cook Works, so it's by which was owned by Alco at the time. But so it's like actually a Paterson, New Jersey locomotive.
That's cool.
Yeah. Which, they actually had a big history of being like, they were one of the main railroad manufacturers in the 1800s. So I believe the Jupiter was theirs.
Was it the Rogers?
No, that was Rogers. But like Cook and I believe Rogers were like the two big ones in Paterson. And I think they both eventually got bought out by Alco, if I remember correctly.
Those New Yorkers coming
positive.
down, ruining our fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's just interesting, especially like after the merger, like hearing of an engine that's still around that was made in Patterson. So that's kind of interesting. Interesting to me. So, but
Dope.
I think our final bit is kind of sad. I'll talk about it since the producer for the Thomas and Friends TV show and the Shining Time Station TV show, which I know both me and Danny were raised on, passed away a few days ago, like right at the end of this year. I guess they announced it, like they didn't even announce it in 2024, they announced it in 2025. But I think she, obviously she touched our lives. I had like Thomas the Tank Engine. It's one of the reasons that I was really into trains, really into steam engines. But like, along with, my dad and my grandfather and stuff like that. I know Danny was actually a little bit less into Thomas the Tank Engine just because he was like, "Dang, steam engines don't have faces."
Not real enough for me.
But I also know that like because of the shows and Reverend Audrey's books, the Railroad series books, like it basically made it so like a whole new generation and several generations of kids came to appreciate trains, probably more than they would have. And truthfully, like I know the Day Out with Thomas stuff helps a lot of tourist railroads. It's one of that and the Polar Express stuff really like makes so they can make the ends meet between Thomas visiting or the Polar. And so like it's, as I said, between the interest that it gave into it, I think like generally I would be surprised. Really, I think Danny is the only rail fan that is under the age of 50 that does not care about Thomas the Tank Engine.
I don't not care about it. I just, I don't know. It's not as, at least as me as a kid, I wasn't as interested.
Yeah, I feel like you actually have more appreciation for the whole thing now as an adult.
Yeah, because the lore in it was more developed than I kind of thought it was at the time as a kid.
Yeah, so it's kind of some sad news to end the year with, but also it's, she really helped, as I said, whole generation, if my generation, probably the younger generation, really get an appreciation for railroads. And I feel like a lot of the restoration things that, like, in a lot of the new blood coming into these restoration things might not, like, they probably wouldn't be interested as much without Thomas the Tank Engine, and, Shining Time Station, that was what I was raised on with, like, George Carlin and Ringo Starr and stuff like that. So, but, all right, Danny, say something fun.
Well, I guess I've heard that. So now Mattel obviously owns.
I was gonna go say something fun to distract from being, the depressing stuff. So
well, Thomas, there's going to be another movie, Thomas movie.
That's true.
So after the success of Barbie, Mattel is now like thinking we have all this IP here that we can just print money from. So they're going to be doing a Hot Wheels movie is what I heard. Looks like there's going to be an American Girl doll movie, but another.
I don't know. I think all these things are just. I don't know how many of them are actually in progress. I think they just have vague ideas going out there right now.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool. Like right now, I
know the Hot Wheels movie is like actually happening, but it would make sense like right along that to be developing some of this IP to be, to give it the attention it deserves. So
yeah,
we'll
like
see
right now they've got the there's a new Thomas and Friends. What is it? All Engines Go, which I know is controversial for most fans, us older fans and stuff like that. But truthfully, as somebody with a 3-year-old, she loves it.
Yeah, it's great.
Like you like the newer thing, so it's like I think it'll be similar to how we felt when they in Thomas and Friends when they went from models to 3D computer animated things. Although that in theory that still kept the lore, that still was like it basically just continuing the stories, while this is basically just being like we're starting over. But if it gets kids into trains and stuff like that, I think it's doing its job.
Yeah, and how many times is like the Marvel universe has rebooted itself multiple times. I think so has Star Trek, right?
Star Trek is never technically rebooted, but that is my other nerddom. The reboot that they did in 2009 was still technically connected to the lore via some weird time travel stuff.
Yeah, so there's some weird stuff going on there. But so 2024, I think, was a good year for rail fans. And I think, I had talked to some... Oh gosh, I talked to some folks, and one of the quotes that comes back to me is never say never, right? So never is a long time.
Yeah.
And so if there's interest in something, there's a chance that it'll happen. Like, I never thought Big Board would come back. I never thought 611 would come back. So there's a lot of really exciting projects going on right now that I think are going to continue to grow the hobby, make sure people are still interested in steam and people are interested in trains and rail fanning. It was a good year for us personally. I think we grew our channel quite a bit, put out some pretty good content. Maybe not as regularly as the year before that, but I think
I wish we had more YouTube content.
YouTube content, yeah.
Video brother.
Yeah, we do put a lot of time into putting the stuff together. It takes a long time to do it.
Yeah, I say this. I like to edit a photo and throw it up on Instagram, and now he has to like edit it for like hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, so I think the hope for 2025 is, well, the other big thing for 2024 is we won our first...
I want to go off what you first were saying, that like 2024 was a good year for generally historic trains and everything like that. I was actually just talking to a friend last weekend, and he was like, no matter what's happening in the world right now, like, world could be going to shit, but like for some reason right now, steam engines are still great. Like, the steam engines are doing great right now. There's just more and more steam engines coming out, still more running, and
and I feel particularly blessed in Philadelphia because I have steam engins like within 90
we're
miles
in a great
of me.
Spot with it, like, where we've got probably like at this point
10
at least, like
10 running
like
steam engines within 90 minutes of us.
Yeah, something like that. I wouldn't say 90, maybe like 2 hours, but like
all right, 90 miles.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, as I said, within close distance to us, we have a decent amount of steam engines running, a decent amount of tourist railroads.
And this year, it's been a good year for us as well. We won our first sort of photo charter event, which is a kind of a big step for us.
Yeah, we haven't really done any of those. That was really fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was for SMS9 that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that was a Railfan magazine event. They did a freaking awesome job organizing the whole thing. It was very reasonably priced, so that's why we jumped on it. They tend to be very expensive, kind of exclusive events. But we're hoping to do some more of them this year and get out there some more, bring you guys some more interesting content.
Yeah, it was always I always have to try to convince Dan to do it because he's like, this is so much. Is it going to be worth it? I'm like, yeah, because they tell you where to shoot. I'm like,
yeah, it was pretty cool.
I was like, I think we have Dan convinced now to do these things more.
Hey, it was just fun. And also getting to talk with people.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a good time. So we'll hopefully be doing more of that this year, and I'm sure we got lots of other ideas cooking. We're still working on all of our train layouts. We're got some we got some big travel plans coming up. So I think 2025 is going to be a good year as well for rail fanning. I'm hoping it's going to be a good year as well for us. So thanks for sticking around with us.
Yeah, and more importantly, we're bringing the podcast back. It's been gone for a whole year.
Stacktalk is back.
I guess, I don't know if you have any way to contact us. I guess maybe those, like, in the comments or something. I don't know how podcasts work. Tell us what you want to hear about. We'll talk about it, because we don't have any expertise on it, but we'll talk about it.
yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Until next time, this is Stacktalk with the Railbrothers, signing off.